R- Imagine standing in a long line at a government office. You have a piece of paper in your hand that is worth billions of dollars. You are nervous, you are sweating, and you are checking the clock every minute. You finally hand over your paper at 11 a.m. Now imagine. Another man walks into that same office at 1 p.m. with the exact same idea. Because he were 2 hours early, you become one of the most famous men in history. Because he was 2 hours late, the world forgets his name. This is exactly what happened to Alexander Graham Bell. Most people think he was a lonely genius who suddenly had a great idea. That is not the real story. Alexander Graham Bell was a man in a desperate race against time, money, and other inventors. Alexander Graham Bell found a way to turn human breath into electricity. Alexander Graham Bell was the man who broke the silence of the world. He didn't just invent a phone. He invented the way we talk to each other today. This is the story of how a teacher of the deaf used his knowledge of sound to build a massive empire that connected every home on the planet, too. He didn't just win the race of science, he won the race of business by a matter of minutes. Bell was born in Scotland, and his whole life was about sound. His mother was deaf, and his father taught people how to speak. Bell spent his days trying to find ways to help deaf people hear the world. He was obsessed with how the human ear works. He even used a real human ear from a hospital to study how the tiny bones move when sound hits them. He had a crazy idea. If a thin piece of skin in your ear can vibrate and send a message to your brain, why can't a thin piece of metal vibrate and send a message through a wire? At the same time, the richest company in the world, Western Union, was offering a fortune to anyone who could improve the telegraph. Bell wasn't trying to build a phone at first. He was trying to send multiple messages over one wire. But while he was working, he realized that if he could send a click, he could send a voice. He spent his nights in a dark basement with his assistant, Thomas Watson, pouring his heart and soul into a machine made of wood and wire. He was running out of money, and his rivals were closing in. He knew that the first person to get to the patent office would own the future. In 1876, Bell finally got his patent. He showed his telephone at a big fair in Philadelphia. And the Emperor of Brazil was so shocked when he heard a voice coming through the wire that he dropped the phone and yelled, "My God, it talks!" But even though people were amazed, nobody wanted to buy it. Businessmen thought it was a toy. They asked, "Why would I want to talk to someone through a wire when I can just send a boy with a letter?" Bell was so broke that he offered to sell his entire telephone patent. Bell didn't give up. He decided that if nobody would buy his patent, he would build his own company. This was the birth of the Bell Telephone Company. He didn't just sell phones. He did something much smarter. He realized that one phone is useless. You need 2 phones to have a conversation. And if you have 1,000 people with phones, you need a way to connect them all. He started building exchanges. He realized the wealth secret of the network effect. The more people who use the phone, the more valuable the phone becomes. He started stringing wires across cities like webs. He hired thousands of women to sit at switchboards and plug wires into holes to connect callers, building the first nervous system of the planet. He was no longer just a teacher. He was becoming the king of communication. Every time someone picked up a receiver and said hello, Bell's empire grew stronger. When Alexander Graham Bell started getting rich, the people who called his invention a toy suddenly changed their minds. Western Union, the giant company that turned him down, realized they had made a massive mistake. They didn't just apologize. They tried to crush him. They hired Thomas Edison, the most famous inventor in the world, to build a better phone. Edison invented a new kind of transmitter that made the voice sound much clearer. For a while, it looked like Bell was going to lose his empire. This was the start of the Great Telephone War. Bell had to fight over 600 lawsuits. Everyone was trying to claim they had the idea first. Bell spent years in courtrooms, defending his 2-hour lead at the patent office. He had to prove that his mind was the one that truly understood how to make a wire talk. The pressure was huge. Imagine being a teacher who just wanted to help deaf people, and suddenly you are fighting the richest men on earth. But Bell had a secret weapon. He was obsessed with the truth. He kept every single notebook and every single drawing from his basement days. In court, he showed his messy notes and his failed experiments. He showed the judges that his invention wasn't a lucky guess. It was years of hard work. The judges ruled in his favor every single time. Because he won those court cases, his company became a monopoly. This means he was the only one allowed to run phone lines in America. This how the giant company AT&T was born. Bell was no longer just a scientist. He was the gatekeeper of every conversation in the country. If you wanted to talk to your neighbor or your boss, you had to go through Alexander Graham Bell. Even though he was now a multimillionaire, Bell's brain wouldn't stop. He actually started to hate the telephone. He thought it was too loud and interrupted his thinking. He once told a reporter that he never had a phone in his own study because he didn't want to be bothered. He moved to a beautiful house in Canada and started working on things that sounded like science fiction. Did you know that Bell invented a way to send sound through a beam of light? He called it the Photophone. This was 100 years before fiber optics and the internet. He actually thought the Photophone was a better invention than the telephone because it didn't need wires. He was literally trying to talk to the sun. He also became obsessed with speed. He built giant hydrofoils, which are boats that lift out of the water and fly across the waves. He broke the world record for the fastest boat in the world. He even worked on giant kites and airplanes because he wanted to beat the Wright brothers. Bell was a man who saw the world as a giant laboratory. He didn't care about the money as much as he cared about the why. He spent his wealth buying land and building labs for other scientists. He wanted to make sure that the next great idea had a place to grow. He even helped start National Geographic magazine because he wanted everyone to see the beauty of the world. He was a man who lived in the future, even though he was stuck in the 1800s. There is a very sad part to Bell's story. Even though he gave the world a voice, he could never give a voice to the two people he loved the most, his mother and his wife. Both of them were deaf. He spent his whole life surrounded by sound and talking wires, but when he went home, he lived in silence. He used sign language and wrote notes to talk to his family. This is why he was so passionate about his work. He wasn't trying to be a billionaire. He was trying to find a way to bridge the gap between the world of sound and the world of silence. He felt like a failure because his greatest invention couldn't help the people he cared about most. This sadness pushed him to work harder. He invented a metal detector to try and save the life of a US president who had been shot. He sat by the president's bed for days, moving his machine over the president's body, trying to find the bullet. Even though he couldn't save him, his invention went on to save thousands of soldiers in later wars. Bell's life shows us that sometimes our greatest strengths come from our greatest pains. He wanted to hear his mother's voice, and because he couldn't, he made it possible for billions of other people to hear theirs. He turned his personal tragedy into a global connection. Alexander Graham Bell died in 1922. On the day of his funeral, every single telephone in the United States and Canada went silent for 1 full minute. It was the only time in history the network stopped. For 60 seconds, the world was quiet again, just like it was before he was born. It was a powerful reminder of how much we rely on his toy. Today, we carry his invention in our pockets. A smartphone is just a tiny, super powerful version of Bell's wooden box. He taught us that distance is just an illusion. He showed us that as long as we can hear each other, we are never truly alone. Bell's wealth secret was simple. Don't just build a product, build a connection. He realized that the world wants to be together, even when we are far apart. Turn a 2-hour, led into a trillion-dollar industry. He was the man who taught the air how to carry a human soul. If you want to be successful, look for the walls that keep people apart and find a way to break them down. Bell didn't just give us a phone, he gave us each other. He started with a human ear and ended with a global net. He was the teacher who taught the whole world how to say hello. You think it is amazing how a 2-hour race created the phone. Wait until you see how the next inventor used a simple ray of light to capture human history and build a city of dreams. Click the next video to see the secret of the man who invented the camera and changed how we see the world forever.